continues. Now, from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, Frank Reynolds.
And the buses are pulling away from the VIP area here at the Cape Kennedy Center because there is going to be no spectacular show today. The launch of the Space Shuttle orbiter has been delayed at least until Sunday. It was really rather striking to notice that just as soon as that announcement was made over the public address systems over this rather vast area out here, why there was just sort of like lemmings, a rush toward the buses and the cars that are parked here, and people began making their way away. I really feel kind of sorry for not the VIPs, but for all the people who came, some of them a great distance, and who waited so patiently and so long for this to happen today. Some of them probably can't come back again on Sunday, although I suspect a good many will. Let's go down now to Becky Chase, who is there in Titusville, about 13 miles away. We had a shot of her a moment ago, and I believe it is not quite as crowded as it was before. Becky, what was the reaction there? Kind of a collective groan when people heard that they were not going to see it today?
Well, Frank, there are certainly worse ways to spend the morning than sitting in this beautiful Florida sunshine. But yes, people were very disappointed when the announcement came that the launch was scrubbed. As you can see, the parking lot here in the area is quickly being deserted. People are running to their trailers and the campers, and they say the biggest problem now is there's a big traffic jam out on US 1. As you said, many people had planned their vacations and their trips to land right here at the for the shuttle launch. Many of them will not be able to make that Sunday shot, but many of the people we talked to said they would try to come back on Sunday because this was such a historic event. Throughout the morning, there's been a young group of people here, members of the Civil Air Patrol Auxiliary from Sebring, Florida, and one of the girls is Kari McDavitt, who says she thinks she'd like to be an astronaut. Kari, how do you think? What do you think about this the scrub today?
I was pretty disappointed. I've been looking forward since 11:30 last night. We left there, and I've gone without sleep for about 30 hours just to come up here and see it.
Did you think at all about what was going through the astronauts' mind as they were sitting there waiting for word of whether the launch was on or not?
Probably, oh no, not again.
You think you could put up with that kind of pressure?
Yeah, I could, if it meant going on the shot, yeah.
So again, some disappointment. People had anxiously waited to see the shot here, but like we said, many would be back. Now the problem, of course, is the traffic to get home. Oh, of course, the people who were probably most disappointed were those who had paid $10 and $20 for a parking space, and they said they didn't get very much for their money. Back to you, Frank.
And they get the privilege of sitting in a big traffic jam now. Well, we're keeping a very close watch on the orbiter because even though it's not going anywhere, the two astronauts are going to come out of it before too long. Jules and Gene Cernan, do you think... Well, what can you tell us about what's happening up there right now?
We've been trying to examine the White Room area, Frank, through field glasses, and I've been trying to get my Questar telescope into play. The trouble is the heat waves shimmer off the ground, as you've seen, destroying effective visibility, except for the very, very top of the pad, the lightning rod, if you will. And obviously they're having some trouble with switch positioning. And obviously, John Young and Bob Crippen, are wanting to do the thing exactly their way, knowing they've got to be back in the thing 48 hours from now.
Well, the crew has been powering down the spacecraft. They've powered down the fuel cells to minimum loads. I think my estimation of 20 or perhaps 30 minutes was a little optimistic based upon familiarity with the Apollo swing arms. The ability to get back to the hatch on a shuttle obviously is a little bit more difficult, but they are in the process of getting back into that White Room soon. I can't believe it would really be much more than another 10 or 15 minutes before we have them out of there.
Well, unlike Apollo, Gene, the shuttle has, let's see, nitrogen tetroxide, N2O4, MMH, monomethylhydrazine, as the fuels for the thrusters, and several of those thrusters are right over the crew exit. So the mission rules say that even after you land at Edwards, for example, or Northrop in White Sands, the ground crew must, wearing breathing masks and protective clothing, must get all those fluids out of there before you can move the crew. Now, I'd think it's somewhat the same problem now, except they're worried about leaks now. I don't think they have to take the hypergolic fuels out.
No, and I think in light of the accident we had here a few weeks ago, there's even a little bit more caution with putting ground personnel back up into areas in proximity to hazardous fuels and gases at this point in time.
It sounds like a cliche, but nothing happens easily in this business anymore.
No, as I say, it has been a worthwhile day to me, and I think to those people out there, in spite of the fact that we didn't launch. We learned a lot. We've got a lot more to learn. I think the decision, perhaps some people might consider conservative. It was a realistic decision at this point in time in this program that I think had to be made and was certainly well justified.
I will stick my neck out again, a situation I do regularly.
You did that with me this morning in the automobile, Jules.
Look, we got here, didn't we?
All right, Jules, what's your prediction? Come on, you're not going to get off the hook.
Well, NASA's made a big thing out of the shuttle operating under airline-type conditions. First, they were talking about 560 flights in the next decade. That's now been scaled down to 460 flights. Well, it's still almost one flight a week, and I think that's going to be impossible to support. I think while it is reusable, while the shuttle vehicle is reusable, while the engines are reusable 50, 55 times, that just plain caution, just plain servicing of the vehicle, that isn't the 747. Gene, I don't think it ever will be.
All right, Jules, thank you very much, and thank you too, Gene. I want to go back now to Houston and Hugh Downs, who is there with a computer expert who can perhaps shed more light on what the problem has been today. Hugh, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. I'm with Edward Chevers, who is a computer expert, and might, I suppose the obvious question is to ask you what's wrong, but that's what they're all working on, isn't it?
Yes.
What takes place when there's a glitch and in a seeming fit of temperament, a computer won't speak to the other computers in the way it should?
Well,
what is broken down?
Well, we have some checks in which the computers do talk to each other. The backup does not talk to the primary. The primaries talk to the backup. It is a one-way transfer, so that if anything went wrong with the backup, we would not pollute the primary. We're trying to preserve the primary at all times. So we only let the primaries talk to the backup.
What is your prognosis for between now and Sunday, getting this in order so that they could go ahead with a Sunday launch?
Oh, I think it's pretty good. As best we can tell right now, it is probably one word which is coming across, which is incorrect. We don't know. Yes.
One word would do that.
Right.
One bit.
Yes. Yes, the backup, there are 4 primary computers, all of which are running in synchronization, talking to each other. Then there is the 5th computer, which is the backup. Now, it only comes into use if you lose all the primaries.
Will this require pulling out some equipment and replacing?
No, what it appears to be is probably a software problem, and we have done memory dumps on the computers. We're still in the process of analyzing to see where the problem is.
Now, if it's software, that means it's just the program that's gone in. Something's wrong there and not wrong with the circuitry of the computer.
We don't think it's in the computers themselves. It should be just in the software at this point.
Well, if we get these computers to speak to each other properly, we'll have it made. But for now, at least, it is going to be till Sunday morning at the earliest.
It appears to be.
Good luck on it. Thank you very much, Mr. Shuttle.
Oh, my pleasure.
Frank?
Thank you, Hugh. So the word incorrect keeps popping up. As a layman, I suppose I shouldn't say this, but sometimes you wonder, maybe the one computer is right and the other 4 are all wrong, but we'll leave that to the experts to decide. We're going to go out to Edwards Air Force Base in just a moment, where our correspondent Ken Kashiwahara is standing by. That was to be, and still is, the primary landing site for the Columbia. It won't be coming down on Sunday. Now, we hope that it will be going up on Sunday, but Edwards is still a very important place, and we'll have a report from there in just a moment. Our coverage of Space Shuttle Columbia continues in a moment.
Mom's incredible. She has arthritis, but insists on making the family breakfast, even when her arthritis is acting up. Some mornings when she got up, she'd take aspirin, but she's more careful to use Bufferin now. Aspirin sometimes upset her stomach, but Bufferin adds protection ingredients. Bayer and Anacin don't. Bufferin relieves her minor pain and its stiffness fast.
Morning, Grandma.
And it works for hours. I'm glad Mom's more careful to use Bufferin now.
It's no secret a lot of people believe American cars aren't built as well as Japanese or European cars. Well, I'd like to take you through this factory to show you the spirit of our workers, the level of our technology, the quality of our cars. Then no one can say our cars don't stack up. We can't take all of you through this plant, but we can give you $50 to test drive and compare our cars to qualifying competitive cars, and we'll pay you no matter whose car you buy. We're not foolish, we're confident.
The new Chrysler Corporation.
This is Frank Reynolds back at the Kennedy Space Center, where what we expected to happen today did not take place. The Space Shuttle Columbia did not lift off the pad, and the earliest now that we can expect to launch is 6:50 on Sunday morning. You might be interested to learn of some of the conversation between the launch control room and the spacecraft. There was this quote, "You have to excuse the delay, gentlemen. All the ducks weren't in a straight line," one launch official told the astronauts. And the reply from Commander Young, quote, "That's okay," unquote. Well, when they do go up, and eventually when they come down, it is believed it will be at Edwards Air Force Base in California, out there in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And our correspondent, Ken Kashiwahara, is standing by there right now. Boy, it looks like a desert. It is a desert. Go ahead, Ken.
Sure is, Frank. If there is a silver lining behind today's scrub, it may be this. The winds here at Edwards Air Force Base are fairly strong right now at about 8 or 7:41 in the morning. What happens here is this. They're strong at this time in the morning. At about 10 o'clock, they tend to die down and become calm until about 1 o'clock. Now, had today's mission gone, it would have been about 3.5 hours behind schedule, which would have put it in here at Edwards on Sunday about 1 or 1:30. That would be about the time that the winds pick up. And that's why one of the reasons why NASA has selected the landing time at about between 10 and 11 o'clock here on the East Coast. So that may be one of the benefits behind today's scrub. The shuttle can land in winds up to 25 knots. The winds are pretty strong now. They tend to get even stronger in the afternoon, but normally not to 25 knots. But when you have a mission like you have going up for the first time, it's obviously ideal if it can land in calm winds. Crosswinds could also be a problem, but probably won't be, since the primary runway here is running at 230 degrees, but there are other runways. If the winds shift in the afternoon, for example, the shuttle can land on another runway. Frank?
Thank you, Ken. We are going to get another announcement now from Launch Control in approximately 25 seconds or so. And perhaps we'll learn more then about whether they've solved the problem with the computer or whether they've come up with any new information bearing on the rescheduling of the flight. The launch is postponed at least until Sunday. The ground launch crew is out there. I believe you can see people way down at the bottom now moving around. No, I guess not. It's too far away. But very shortly they'll be bringing
Shuttle launch control. At the present time, the closeout crew, which previously had sealed up the hatch and gotten the astronauts properly connected to the orbiter, are on their way back to the pad with the astronaut van. This operation should take approximately a half hour. It has been determined to leave the hydrogen and the oxygen tanks into replenish mode as the safest configuration for the egress of the astronauts. The entire process will be exact reversal of what was done when they entered the orbiter this morning. At the present time, the astronaut van and the closeout crew are on their way to the pad and are expected to arrive at the pad just a few minutes from now. They will then go up the elevators to the orbiter access arm and across the orbiter access arm, where they will have to take out the thermal protection plugs which they had previously placed in it, attach the door handle, and then open the hatch. The closeout crew has reached the pad surface now and is moving toward the elevator to go up to the orbiter access arm level. We expect approximately a half-hour operation to take the crew, open up the hatch and get the crew out and headed down the elevator for the return trip to the astronaut quarters. Immediately following the removal of the astronauts, the next steps will include a draining of the liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen tanks back into the pad doors. At the present time, we have had an announcement in the firing room that we are scheduled for no earlier than Sunday morning. This is Shuttle Launch Control.
Well, I gather that is standard procedure, Gene Cernan, to remove the astronauts and get them out of there. Really, although they don't like to put it that way, probably just about as fast as possible, because they are, after all, on board a fully loaded spacecraft, aren't they?
Well, they are, and I had heard that a little earlier the Launch Control Center actually apologized. Apparently the egress crew and the astronaut van had trouble getting through the roadblock. Now, that seems a little funny when we control the roadblock, but apparently they did have some delays and some problems getting through it, and that was the initial slowdown in getting them to the pad.
Yeah, we heard the Launch Control apologizing to young equipment for the delay. But the delay in getting through, the trouble in getting through the roadblock is not so strange. You know, in the accident they had here the other week, Gene, which killed the 2 workers when they entered the nitrogen compartment and died of hypoxia or oxygen starvation, the ambulances couldn't get through the roadblock and couldn't get on the pad. Those procedures have now been changed.
We do have a secure launch site.
It is secure.
Okay, Jules, although I must say, and thank you too, Gene, I must say that the astronaut van, with all the proper accreditation and all the signs and all the paraphernalia and everything else, that particular vehicle having trouble getting through a roadblock strikes me as being somewhat bizarre, particularly when the astronauts themselves have been up there for so long and are undoubtedly anxious to get out. Well, it's been a day of a certain measure of disappointment, of course, but it's part of the business, I guess. It's certainly not the first time that people have gone right up almost to the moment of launch and then have had to suffer the disappointment of being told to come back for another day, which is basically what has happened here today. The astronauts will be taken out, we understand, in about half an hour. This picture now, I believe, is of some of the launch control or the launch crew, the astronaut crew, really, not the astronauts themselves, but their support personnel in the White Room. And if they'll just open that hatch, I suppose we should be able to see the astronauts coming out before too long. But we had word from Launch Control a short while ago that it would take about half an hour. Max, have you learned anything more there in Houston about possible rescheduling of this mission?
We have not learned anything on the rescheduling, Frank, but what we have learned could have a bearing on that. What we have learned from a source is that apparently NASA officials feel that it is a hardware problem, not software and programming, but a hardware problem with the computer circuitry itself. So we'll be looking for that. I suppose when you talk about recycling with the astronauts and the NASA crew, all of us reporters could use a bit of that ourselves. How about you, Frank?
Yeah. Max, just one thought here. We talked earlier of the kind of temperament that could handle frustration and apprehension. It must be very frustrating when the weather was right all over the world. Some of the problems had been solved, and here these guys are sitting there, and now because of one glitch that's relatively small, it had to be scrubbed until at least a couple of days from now. So we'll be with them in spirit and hoping that things do go off Sunday morning. Back to you, Frank.
All right, thank you, Hugh, and thank you too, Max. Well, it's been an interesting morning, if not exactly a very fulfilling one, at least in terms of the expectations we all had when we came out here before dawn today. But the astronauts are all right. They're going to be removed from the spacecraft very shortly, and we will be following the story, of course. The earliest possible launch now could be Sunday morning, and we hope that maybe it will actually happen at that point. Anyway, we'll be on the air to keep you informed. This is Frank Reynolds at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral.
This has been The Next Giant Step, ABC News live coverage of the Space Shuttle Columbia. More on the developments of the Space Shuttle on ABC's World News Tonight, and later full coverage on ABC News Nightline. This has been a special events presentation.
You know what I'm gonna do? What? I'm going